Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. So it's an honor introducing hosting Khan Academy today here at Google. We have three wonderful guests here: Sal, who is the founder, and Shantanu, who is the president and CEO, and Marsha, who's a software engineer at Khan Academy. I learned about Khan Academy about a year ago. I wasn't sure how it also comes with a lot of comments also, like people appreciating. I wasn't sure like how just video is going to be so radical as far as personal education is concerned. So I tried it myself, and I guess the first thing that I noticed was that it almost seems that he was having more fun teaching me than I was having fun like listening to him. He's so passionate about teaching, and I intentionally chose a non-technical topic, which I always hated while like history. And I watched through all the videos, and it was just like blast, and very subtle level, I realized why it works. With that, I will actually give it to Chris Yohlik. He will formally introduce Sal. He has been working with Khan Academy over the past year, and he has actually helped them get $50,000 grant from Microsoft Research, and he also helped them get $2 million from Google as part of the 10 to the 100th project. So with that, I'll give it to Chris.
Hey, I have 4 children, ages 8 through 15, and we homeschool them. My wife is very interested in education technology. She has a degree in education technology, and she, it's kind of illegal to experiment on humans, so she made her own. And we've been basically educating our kids using 100% online materials. Kind of every kid's got a computer. They spend all day at the computers, and then they go off to, physical education classes outside the home and stuff like that. So she's a great student of what kind of education technologies are out there in the world. She's, we buy everything. She researches everything. Well, just over 2 years ago, she sent me a link to this Khan Academy. She said, "Hey, check this out. This one's pretty cool, and it's free." And I started watching a few videos. I watched the banking crisis explanation videos. And I was like, this stuff is really, really good. And I had been thinking about what are a few of the really big high-impact projects we can do in the world, like fixing carbon dioxide emissions, educating the people in the world. These are some of the huge problems where you can really totally transform the future. And I firmly believe that doing this for free so that everybody in the world has access to education materials by taking advantage of the leverage that technology offers, the ability to take one lecture given by one guy and then have 100,000 people watch it over the next few months. And Sal's done 1,800 little capsule lectures, and they have a typical number of views of around 100,000 each, 40,000 here, 1 million there, give or take. So he's reaching right now about 2 million people a day.
A month. Unique a month.
Unique a month.
200,000
Okay. The University of
yeah.
California has 0.2 million, right? So he's reaching 10 times the University of California with his own efforts, a few people helping him, and a free video hosting service, right? So that's the power of technologies like YouTube and App Engine to let people build incredibly impactful, valuable things, for free. So, a year ago, I was working on this education project. It wasn't Microsoft Research that gave him the 50K, by the way. It was Google Research. And I also helped the Google 10 to the 100 team, decide and figure out how to give them 1/5 of the total prize, which is $2 million. And I think he's gotten some significant backing from the Gates Foundation and from John and Ann Doerr and a few others. So he's able now to really commit full time and actually hire people and expand. And he's getting some serious publicity help. That publicity has caused him to grow a factor of 50 in the past year. So he was getting something like 40,000 views a month a year ago. He's getting 2 million a month right now, and that's just incredible. And it's probably going to continue accelerating at that kind of pace for a while. You can look forward to most people on the planet having seen a Khan Academy video, in the next couple of years. That's impact. So We're going to start the talk. There's a Dory page at go/Khan Academy. There's going to be a lot of kind of question and answer period at the end. There's a microphone in the middle. Go up and ask your questions at the end. Don't interject. I'd like to introduce the Linus Torvalds of education, the guy who's going to transform the operating system of the education future.
Hey,
Salman
thank
Khan.
you. Thank you. So, well, actually, I don't want to be, how many of y'all saw the TED Talk that came out like a week okay, so I don't want to bore y'all, but some of y'all haven't seen it, but there'll be a little bit of overlap. But just so you know how the structure of this, I'm going to do a quick overview, and feel free to interrupt me at any time or ask a question. And then we'll just open up to Q&A, because that'll be more fun. We'll learn things. But just to start off, as Chris mentioned, Khan Academy started off me making videos. So I'll show y'all a little bit of a video montage on, just so you get a feel for what the videos are like, and then we'll show you what else we're up to. This is...
So the hypotenuse is now going to be 5. This animal's fossils are only found in this area of South America, a nice clean band here, and this part of Africa. We could integrate over the surface, and the notation usually is a capital sigma. National Assembly, they create the Committee of Public Safety, which sounds like a very nice committee. Notice this is an aldehyde, and it's an alcohol. Start differentiating into effector and memory cells. A galaxy. Hey, there's another galaxy. Oh, look, there's another galaxy. And for dollars is their $30 million plus the $20 million from the American manufacturer. If this does not blow your mind, then you have no emotion.
So that's a feel for what we're doing. And as Chris mentioned, we are now, there's now on the order of 2,200 videos. I made 5 this morning. They're 10 minutes, they're not. They now cover everything from basic arithmetic all the way to vector calculus and the French Revolution and all the rest. And we're reaching, actually, like a month ago we were reaching 1 million unique students a month. Now we're reaching 2 million unique students a month just with the latest kind of buzz. So that's kind of where we are now, but there's a lot more that we're up to. Y'all have very generously given us $2 million, so I kind of view this as a bit of a progress report. But before I go into that, I'll talk a little bit about how I got started. As y'all know, I was a hedge fund analyst 5 years ago in Boston. Then we moved the firm out here to Northern California. It was actually a 2-person hedge fund, and my boss, his wife became a professor at Stanford, so we moved to Palo Alto. And I was tutoring my cousins remotely in New Orleans, and I started working with one cousin, then another cousin, then another cousin. Before I knew it, I had this cohort of cousins all over the country. And I was looking for a way to scale myself up. And one of my buddies, Zulfikar Ramzan, I should give him credit, I was literally hanging out at his house, showing him, how I was tutoring my cousins and all of that. He's like, why don't you put some of your lectures on YouTube? And I said, oh, that's silly. YouTube's for dogs on skateboards. It's not for, it's not for serious, learning. But once I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea, I said, I'll take a shot at it. And I remember the first video, I think, and you could go there, literally, it was like November 6, 2006. It was greatest common divisor or least common, one of those. I wanted to teach my cousin's fractions. So I was like, oh, what do they have to know? And the negative numbers. And I put like 20 or 30 videos. And this has turned into a bit of a one-liner, but it's true. The very first feedback my cousins gave me were that they preferred me on YouTube than in person. And so I felt like there was, this was something to do. So I kept making the videos. I started getting feedback from people all over the country saying how it helped them. Someone was, hey, this helped me on my exam. I passed an exam. But some of them were like, hey, I was going to drop out of high school until these videos, or this motivates me to go to college and become an engineer, or this is the only reason why I can, now that I'm retiring from the military, I actually feel comfortable going back to the community college. So I was excited. So I kept going. And along the way, the site kind of grew. And then the other thing that happened, and actually this is what most people don't realize, and sometimes I switch around the story just because it sounds better when I started with the videos, but I actually started on the software side. If you rewind, before I even wrote that first piece, that I recorded that first video, when I was tutoring my cousins, I would just point them to random websites. I was like, hey, I just found some website run by this university, and there's 10 good problems on fractions. Why don't you do those problems, and we'll go over them tomorrow. And the next day, I'd say, hey, now you do the problem. She'd be like, yeah, I did them. I was like, how many you get right? She's like, oh, I think I got them all right. I was like, oh, when did you do the problems? Oh, yeah, I did them like at night. And, so it wasn't that informative. So I say, oh, I'm going to write my own problem. And then she would run out of problems. There's these little worksheets that you see all over the web, like 10 problems, and you're done. So I wrote these really primitive JavaScript generate problems, as many as you want, in adding fractions or adding negative numbers or multiplying fractions or whatever. And so that was, the premise was, I'll give you as many problems as you need until you get 10 in a row, and I'll show you what they look like in a second, and you'll get hints for them. And before I even made the first video, I thought that was the solution. That was like, this is all someone needs to do to learn math, because you have the unlimited exercises, you have hints and all of that. But then once the videos kind of took off, it was just a better use of my time to make 5 videos a day rather than one module every 5 days. So that kind of got orphaned a little bit. And actually, one thing that happened is I left it out there, and I had like this $50 a month web hosting. And at some point, there were too many people using that software, so I just turned it off, which is probably a bad idea if you're ever starting a business. It's probably a signal that you should maybe spend $100 on your web hosting. But so when kind of the opportunity, once Khan Academy started growing, we had this viewership, and it seemed like there was an organization that we could start here. The question is, like, how do you take what we're doing to the next level? And that's what I want to show you right here. So these are the exercises, and what I started with my cousin was a much more primitive version, but this is the same, actually some of the same basic code. It's been fancied up a good bit now. But the general principle is, it'll give you as many, this is subtraction 1, it'll give you as many problems as you need until you get 10 in a row. And it's a very simple, it's got cut off here, but you can have the videos here, there's hints, you can see it draws a number line for you. The Khan Academy videos can be pumped in. And it's a very simple idea. You do it until you get 10 in a row, but it's, at least in our minds, completely different than what happens right now in kind of a traditional school. In a traditional school, lecture, homework, lecture, homework, lecture, homework, lecture, homework, then snapshot exam. And regardless of whether you get 80%, 90%, or 95%, the whole class moves on. Even if you fail an exam, actually, the whole class will move to the next topic. And what was that 5, 20, or 30% you didn't know? It was probably something that you actually probably need for the next topic, or definitely something that you'll need in a few years. And there's no, people kind of just ignore it. They just place a label on your head that kind of some type of value judgment on whether you're smart or not, and then everyone just proceeds down with those gaps. And so what we're saying is, no, we have to do the opposite. Instead of penalizing you for failure and not expecting mastery, we want to do the opposite. We want to allow you to experiment. If you're learning to ride a bicycle, you would just sit on that bicycle as long as it takes to actually learn how to ride the bicycle. And so that's what we want to do here. We want to allow you to experiment, allow you to fail, but you're not going to move on to more advanced topics until you actually master the topic. So that is the subtraction 1 module. This right here is trigonometry. This right here is shifting and reflecting functions. And then this is how all of the exercises are structured. So literally, this node right up there is single digit addition. So it's literally 5 plus 7 or 1 plus 1. And once you get 10 in a row there, it'll move you up to 1 digit and a double digit addition, and then single digit subtraction, and then we call it very basic multiplication. And once you get 10 in a row there, it keeps moving you down what we call this knowledge map. And if you keep going down the knowledge map, you start getting into some more advanced arithmetic, some pre-algebra right here. Go further down, it starts getting into algebra, a little bit of trigonometry, geometry, and pre-calculus. And so the general idea is we want this graph to eventually cover everything. Actually, the funding that y'all have given us, roughly half the funding is to translate the videos into 10 languages, but the other half of the funding is to build out this graph structure to cover on the order of about 200 or 300 modules. So it literally is all of K through calculus mathematics. But the goal, and it's already pretty good coverage for K through, I would say, K through 9 or K through 10 mathematics. But the goal is right now it's about 107 modules. The K through calculus is probably going to be on the order of about 300 modules total if we're very comprehensive. But there's no reason why you can't expand from this into logic, into computer programming, into genetics, into probability, into finance, into accounting, into grammar and logic. You could just keep building off of this knowledge map, so it really covers everything that can be quizzed in this type of form factor. And so this is just some more of it right over here. And so the paradigm that we're doing, so when I started this, I assumed it would be a kind of a nice to have, a supplement for people. Even when we kind of formally became an organization, we didn't assume that it would be adopted in schools. But then, well, one thing that happened is that teachers started adopting it on their own, just the videos. We started getting letters from teachers saying, hey, you've already given the lecture, so we're using those to flip the classroom. So instead of me giving the lecture, me the teacher, I'm assigning your lectures as homework, and then what used to be homework, I'm having the students do in the class. And it's a very simple concept, but it really changes what a class is all about then. Now all of a sudden, instead of, you literally have 30 people completely silent, completely passive, most of them zoned out, a teacher having to give this one-size-fits-all lecture, even a great teacher, they're losing probably 2/3 of the class. Now, that happens at home. You don't have to be embarrassed to rewind and look at something that you might have missed, or fast forward if you're bored, or pause something 10 times. You don't have to interrupt the whole class. And now when you actually go to class, you actually have all of your peers. You actually have the teacher to actually to help you out. And it's interesting. One thing, I had mentioned this in the TED Talk, and a lot of people say, oh, but that'll work for motivated students, but what about the students who aren't going to do that? And I was like, well, if you're not going to do anything at home, period, it's still better that you're doing the exercises in the classroom, because that's frankly where you're going to get most of the learning. And if you didn't do it, watch the video in the classroom too. And so the paradigm is where you really learn stuff and where you're really getting your head around something, you want other people to be around you when you're actually trying to solve the problem. And when you're trying to listen to a lecture, you don't want people around you. You don't want your peer to say, oh my God, look how stupid Sal is. I didn't have to pause that, or he's reviewing stuff from third grade. You don't want that around. So you want the lecture to be intimate, but you want the actual classroom experience to be social. So what we're doing in classrooms now is taking that to the next level. Los Altos right here, they came to us actually about 4 months ago, Shantanu and myself, we had a meeting with their school board and said, if you just had carte blanche in a classroom, how would you run the classroom? And we said, well, we would let every student work at their own pace on those exercises on that knowledge map I just showed you. And the teacher would walk in every day and just get a dashboard that looks something like this. And this is actually the live dashboard now from Los Altos, just so you know how the story ends. But the teacher would let everyone work at their own pace and only intervene on the kids who are stuck. And they kind of said, oh, that's a very radical approach. But then the next day they said, oh, we'll do it. So Los Altos, in November, they started with 2 5th grade classrooms and 2 7th grade classrooms. And this became, I would say this became 50 to 60% of their math curriculum, with the other 40% being project-based learning. So they completely gutted the traditional part of the curriculum. No more lectures, no more traditional homework, no more kind of a teacher, the lecture homework cycle. Now, the students walk into class. The teacher looks at a dashboard like this. Each row here is a student. I've blanked them out for privacy. Each column here is one of those concepts you saw on that knowledge map. And green means the student's already gotten 10 in a row. Blue means that they're working on it, but no need to worry. And red means that the student's stuck. So there could be a kid working on 3rd grade math in the 5th grade classroom, and there is. That's cool, as long as he or she isn't stuck. There could be a kid working on trigonometry in the 5th grade classroom, and that actually is happening. And that's actually entertaining, because there was a reporter who asked the girl, she was literally doing trigonometry, and she's a 5th grader. And she's like, do you think this is 5th grade math? And she's like, no, I think it's 6th grade. And but that's cool. They should both be working on those respective concepts, because that's where they are. But the teacher just works on whoever's stuck. Or even better, get one of the kids who are already proficient in that module, who've already gotten 10 in a row. Let them be the first line of attack and actually tutor their peers. And we all know when you actually tutor someone, there's a whole other level of learning that's going to happen when you do that. And the teacher only intervene. And so then every kind of moment of a teacher's time is actually spent on being a human, being kind of interacting with the classroom. I've mentioned this in other talks, is that whenever people talk about technology, they assume it's kind of like, okay, it's probably good for economics, it's probably good to kind of get more bang for your buck, but it's probably going to dehumanize the classroom. And the one thing we keep saying is no, it's the complete opposite. When you do something like this in a traditional classroom, only about 5% of a teacher's time is actually being a human being, actually sitting down next to someone and tutoring them, mentoring them, working with them. Now 100% of their time is. So you're using technology, you're actually humanizing the classroom by, if you believe those numbers, and I actually think the 5% was generous, by a factor of 20. And so we don't want, even when I worked with my cousins, Nadia and even when I had the data I would ask her, did you get this? Did you understand this? And she's like, oh yeah, I got it. And it was there's these very painful discussions you ever have if you ever try tutoring anybody on what they do get and what they don't get. And so what we wanted to do, we wanted to avoid the teacher having to do those really painful, kind of awkward questions. And so we're trying to arm the teachers with as much data as possible. So this is one of the views. A student can view this about him or herself, or a teacher or a parent can see this about any of their students. And this is just one of the reports. We have a bunch of them, but this is literally just the activity for the student over the last 30 days. You could see it over the last day, so you could see it by hour, you could see it over the last year. But each of these bars, these are on a certain day. The light blue is the time spent on exercises. The navy blue is the time spent on videos. These are the highest achievements achieved that day. And if the student or the teacher, they scroll over any of this, they actually see exactly the student spent 38 minutes on exercises. They got that many energy points. These are their achievements. The videos would be there if they watched videos that day. And we're actually even tracking when they pause the videos, when did they repeat the videos. And we're going to start using that, one for the teacher to know what happened, but also even for us to know how can we improve our videos. One kind of report that teachers asked us, they said, look, it looks like some of the kids are really focused and they're moving ahead while some kids are jumping around a lot. Can we have a report on focus? And we said, sure. So this is the focus report. The outer circle is literally a pie chart of what exercises students spent time on. This inner circle is where they spent on videos. And once again, if you scroll over any of that, you get more detail on exactly what the student was up to. This right here, it just kind of shows how granular the data is. This is a student who is doing the probability 1 module. So a teacher can go and say, okay, this was the first problem. They got it right. That's why it's blue. They probably guessed because they spent like 4 seconds on it. And they watched the video. Then they got the next one wrong, a couple right, maybe guessed, wrong. Then it looks like whenever they actually made an effort on the problem, they got it wrong, and then they guessed a few right. then they used a hint. And if you click, if a teacher, actually even if it's a student later, when they see this on the report, they click on any of these, they see the exact problem that they didn't get right. And then you can eventually see, and this was fun, it got clipped off here, but you can see the student eventually getting 10 in a row. And it's fun because you can almost see them thinking. Like there was some deep thought going on the 99th problem, where the student said, no, I'm going to get my streak now. And so he or she literally got this problem right. And then you can actually see it. They get faster and faster, and then they get 10 in a row. So you can actually see the learning process. And one thing that I think most people, you say self-paced learning sounds like a good idea, but the one thing we're seeing over and over and over again, and this goes back to there's literally in one of the 5th grade classrooms in Los Altos, there's a few kids doing 3rd grade math, and there's a few kids doing even calculus. And there's a huge temptation, right, when you see that. Oh, gifted kids, remedial kids. But it's cool, they can be in the same classroom, but those kids are gifted, those kids are remedial. Those kids are not going to be at Google. These kids, I mean, that's we all do that. When you see that, you just think that we're just so used to labeling people. But one thing we're seeing over and over again, we're seeing it at Los Altos, we've seen it in other summer camps we've run, is that some subset of those kids, 5 days into it, there's this spread. Some kids, this is just days into the pilot. This is the modules completed. Some days into it, there's a group that clusters here, and you can see that group here, and there's a group that clusters here. These are the gifted students in a traditional system. These would be the slow students. But you always see these students, once they spend extra time on some module, and they get some core weakness out of the way, you see, and you don't know who they are. You really have no idea who they are. They just rocket forward. Everything else just starts to click. And so in a matter of 6 weeks, we've seen this flipping multiple times of the students that you used to think were slow or remedial. They just had some basic core weakness. And once you actually gave them a chance to get it out of the way, they just rocket ahead. And then, I mean, this kid right here, literally, I think he's our number 1 or number 2 kid in the class. And starting off, he was one of the worst. So you see this over and over and over again. So that's kind of the general idea of what we're up to. We can we can address a lot more of it in the Q&A. But our goal is literally to be a free classroom for the world. Give a world-class education to anyone, anywhere. And I want to be careful. We don't think we're doing that yet. We think we're solving parts of the problem. We have the videos. We're doing the exercises, we're doing the data, we're doing the analytics, we can kind of become an operating system for a classroom. But we think there's a lot more, and that's why it's fun to talk to y'all, because to some degree we could even brainstorm on what that would mean. But I think it's completely possible that you can have a reality where in 5 or 10 years, ideally you will have a classroom where you will have a human being actually helping you out. But there's a reality where even if you don't have that, you can get a pretty darn good education. So I'll open it up to questions. Anyone who wants to walk up to the microphone, and if y'all, there's, I guess, that website where people have ranked questions. If I could, I'll take this.
Hi, thank you for coming. I wanted to ask a question about if the model for the future is going to be one like Wikipedia, where you're going to open up the creation of the content, the videos, and the exercises, and if so, how would you kind of maintain the quality and those types of things?
No, that's a great question. The question is, will we open it up to kind of be a Wikipedia of education as opposed to, and so we're open to opening it up somewhat, but I think for video-based lectures, if we just focus on the video side, I think the reason why kind of that crowdsourcing doesn't work is it's one, your quality is going to be all over the place, and it's, even if the quality is good, it would actually be very jarring. If I came and give you, imagine if you're in a math class and I came in and gave the first lecture, and then the next day you have another good lecture, but you're like, who is this guy? And then the next day you have another lecture. So there's actually this huge level of trust that you has to build with the lecturer for you to be able to invest in more and more watching. So that's why we resist to kind of really opening it up. We do suspect there's a whole set of things that other people know that I could never know, or that would teach better than me, or maybe they'll teach the same thing that I'm teaching, but in a different way that responds to other people. And so we are open to people, kind of, we're telling people, hey, make 30 videos, 40 videos, 50 videos in a certain topic. One, you should do it on your own, because you don't need us to broadcast them, but if it really does feel the same, it's consistent with our brand, we'd be open to it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I'll take top down. Okay. I'll read this first one. With such busy schedules and varying priorities, how are parents, students supposed to identify online learning centers like Khan Academy that are legitimate academic institutes and not just money-making schemes created to take advantage of the online trend? So one, we're not for profit, so we're definitely not a money-making scheme, unless I got particularly creative with the, but we're not a money-making scheme. And actually, that was one of the main reasons for being a not-for-profit. I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about double bottom line organizations, which is an oxymoron. I mean, bottom line is meant to be literally the bottom line. Like, that's the thing that you care about. And you can't say I care about two things that are usually in opposition with each other. So if I was genuine, and I hope I am, about, no, the number one goal is not to become rich, not to do whatever. The number one goal is to provide an education for people. Make it a not-for-profit. And there's other realities that it actually has a better chance of becoming a lasting institution then. If it was for-profit, it would probably be acquired by McGraw-Hill at some point, and I'd buy a nice house, but that would be the end of it. But here there actually is a potential to last potentially beyond me. I'll take a question. Hey.
Yeah, so one of the problems that I have is, we run a training for our Google partners. It's technical training. Mm-hmm. We have a classroom-based, and it's like your model. We focus on getting the learning exercises, walking around, helping them get through and covering the theory. But we have another group of people who are, they can't come here for various reasons. I have problems getting them to actually do the homework, because that's where the learning, watch the tutorial, the recorded tutorials. But the homework piece, it seems it drops off. People are not that interested. What kinds of things can you recommend?
I think, so to get people to do the homework, I mean, the best way is just to track it. I mean, if that gives you information on whether they are or aren't doing the homework.
Well, they're not submitting it, so I know.
Oh, they're not. Yeah. So they're not submitting. So they're not.
I'm wondering about, and we have some carrots, like we have certification, and that's a big carrot that we're seeing, people completing the content. Yeah. But are there other, because competing events that people have in their life?
It's interesting that, we had the gut sense that like gamifying a lot of it, giving badges and points, and I actually can even show you, we have some of that over here. We have some of these badges right over here. So gamifying, we thought it would be kind of a nice to have, like it would make it kind of cool, but it's amazing what it's done. Oh, that's not on the screen now.
You've seen a lot more people completing the content with the badges?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, just changing the amount of points you give for certain achievements or the wording actually has changed like thousands of people's behaviors overnight. Oh yeah, there you go. Those are the badges. So we just have a ton of these badges that we've set up, and I was saying earlier at lunch in Los Altos, these are 5th graders. So let me show you. There's a black hole badge that right now, the black hole badge is, we haven't defined it. It's called the most legendary badge on the Khan Academy. And it's actually impossible to get right now, because we said, no, that has to be, once we have 300 modules, then only can, maybe if you get 200, we don't even have that, so it's actually impossible to get now. But the 5th graders became so obsessed with getting 5th graders with getting a black hole badge that some subset of them went into our code. So it's an open source project. Went into our code and figured out that they had to get 150. They told us, oh, we figured it out. We have to get 150. We're like, how do you? The code. So it's amazing. It's amazing what I mean. Y'all should be giving offers to those kids. I don't know what they're. Yeah, but it's amazing what this type of thing does to motivate, especially kids. I don't know if it'll do it for employees.
Thank you.
Yeah, those. Yeah, exactly. I'll take one from the. I'll read it. I'll just read it. Oh, where's the? Oh, there's not a. Oh, these are always the same thing. Okay, so you tend to focus on math, science, and economic concepts. What do you think it would take to make this format work for grammar, writing, or composition? So grammar, I think, is one that's very doable. And actually, I've tried to contact people who have good. I won't name the companies, but there's a company out there that I think has a really good. When I studied for the GMAT, I used their book, and I was like, I finally learned grammar. And it might not be obvious hearing me speak now, but so I just want to find good materials. But I think grammar actually is perfect for both the videos and for the exercises because it is actually logical and very mathematical to a large degree, and you can diagram things out. I think what were the other writing or composition? Those will be interesting. I think writing and composition are much more activity-based. You can't just have someone give you a lecture on what it means. Although it probably would be interesting to have someone give a lecture, maybe it's me, maybe it's someone else, on what, like, this is well written, this is badly written, and why it is. But the more useful thing is to actually write things and maybe get some type of peer review. So it probably won't fit directly into that knowledge map structure, but I think there is something we could do to leverage the 2 million students using Khan Academy right now where you write an essay, maybe we have essay competitions or people write essays and then they peer review it and the best ones surface. I think there's something that we can do, but we haven't figured that out yet. I'll take one right here.
All right. So I'm a huge fan. I actually watched most of your linear algebra lectures over the winter break, and I've been trying to tell everyone I know.
You deserve a badge.
I thought about actually some of your things to get badges and show it to my nephew. So I've been telling everyone I know about Khan Academy, but I was brainstorming with other engineers here about what can we do to help? Because as you mentioned, other people giving lectures isn't necessarily helpful because they may not be good lectures. So what can other individuals or Google do to accelerate this process other than just giving money?
Yeah, or you could give.
Well, I mean, so
no. Actually, no. Genuinely, and you're right. I mean, we view kind of the videos are kind of what get people into our fold, but then the real value is the exercises and I think eventually the community is going to be super valuable. So I don't know the policies of volunteering code for other projects and things, but those modules, they're very standalone. And we're speccing them out, and if you say, hey, wait, I could write a whole set of modules on grammar. We'd love that. Work with us. We're literally based on Castro Street, so we're not too far away. But if there's more sophisticated things, people at Google, even outside of the funding, have helped us move forwards with some of the translations and things like that. So if there's interesting things out there that at Google, either projects that could directly benefit some of what I've talked about, or you're like, hey, I think it would be fun to crank out a couple of those modules or have some neat ideas for them. We'd love to have your help. And we are hiring if any of y'all are looking for a sabbatical or actually, I don't know what the policy is on saying something. But I
had one more quick question. Just
sure.
How much planning do you do for your videos?
How much what?
How much pre-planning do you do?
How much pre-planning do I do before the videos? So if I'm doing like an algebra worked example, I literally will put it up there and just do the problem. Like when you see me do it, it's the first time I'm looking at the problem, unless something disastrous happens. If I'm doing like I did some videos recently on China. Actually, that was one of the ones in the montage on how China pegs its currency to the U.S. dollar. That one it's something I'm kind of familiar with from my hedge fund life. So I kind of like the walk to work. I'll think about it, and then when I sit down, I'll just do it. So the one, and then if I'm doing something that I'm really not that familiar with, that I really have to get myself re-immersed, like organic chemistry, that I'll spend like 2 weeks, like literally just immersing myself in the field, and getting the kind of living and breathing organic chemistry. And then I'll make the video. What I tell people is I try to prepare my brain, but I don't try to script the lectures because then they come off unnatural or scripted. I'll alternate. That's the. how can we make sure that great programs like this don't widen the gap between the haves and have-nots? Those who need the most help are often unlikely to have a home computer or a high-speed connection. So that's actually a really good point. And I suspect, and I mean, it's not something that I'd like to admit, but I suspect that right now we maybe are. That right now it is people, I think Khan Academy's penetration is much higher in Google households than it is in random households across the country, and I think it's definitely much higher than households where there isn't a parent with a college education. So I think right now we are probably, in the short term, unfortunately, doing that. I think over the long term, though, what it does is, right now when everyone says, oh, we should get one laptop per child, or we should put fiber to this school or to that school, there's not a tangible reason to do it. Like there's kind of a feel-good reason that maybe it'll help. It'll probably help kids have the access. But I think once something like a Khan Academy exists and people see that, it's actually, we better get our act together, and this is actually what's going to be the catalyst for getting fiber to the classroom. This is the catalyst for getting laptops in front of kids. Then it'll actually close the gap, because the delivery cost is actually zero. I mean, one thing that we're saying is, it is, Los Altos is not a needy neighborhood. But they were quick to adopt it because they're flexible. I mean, we're really impressed with how they run. There's some private schools that want to adopt it really fast, and there's like no bureaucracy, nothing, so they're adopting it. But what we suspect is going to happen is they're kind of setting the best practice, and then hopefully around the rest of the country, around the world, all sorts of, upper middle class, lower middle class, they'll say, wait, if they're doing that in Los Altos, or they're doing it at that fancy private school, how come our kids are not doing it? And on top of everything, it's free, so there's no reason not to do it. So I think in the near term, there might be a little bit of that, but hopefully over the long term, it actually serves as a catalyst to actually motivate the technology gap.
Hi, my name is Zan, and I should admit that both my parents are math teachers, and I was a math teacher before I came to Google. So it's really exciting to see, I've certainly seen a lot of times with my family being skeptical of various ways of technology trying to replace, but it's really exciting because this very much correlates with the types of challenges. My mom's especially big into self-paced learning, which is really time-intensive and people-intensive, so it seems like it's a really amazing way to let that happen and let the teachers focus on the most important place where they can add the most value. That's what I was wondering, how you've seen teachers kind of incorporate this, in terms of when they're wanting to do deeper problem solving or group work, and how does that classroom experience integrate? And
yeah, so the question about how does this integrate with what teachers trying to do kind of a deeper experience, and I get a lot of anecdotal stuff on emails and stuff, and I said even before we started doing this pilot with Los Altos, there were teachers who were flipping the classroom, lectures at home, or home and in the classroom, and then the teacher can work with them. And what we're seeing in Los Altos is, and even those teachers, is because you're freeing up all of this time, where this lecture doesn't have to happen in the classroom, it depends on the teacher, but it frees up a ton of time so they can do the project-based learning. There's so much debate, project-based learning versus kind of the traditional doing a lot of exercises and seeing a lot of problems-based learning. And what's cool about this is you do both. They're both valuable. It's actually not an either-or proposition. And even, a lot of people say, do you teach new math or old math? I do both. Why not? There's no reason. There's no limitation for a classroom or so you can actually do every possible way of looking at something.
Awesome. Thanks again. Yeah, it's really amazing.
Oh, thanks. I'll take one here. Students are now truly, and I'm doing it like the videos. I don't know how bad these questions are. Might put me in the spot, but students are now truly empowered to work through course material at their own pace. How do you create meaningful cohort groupings in this context? Age as opposed to skill seems to be inefficient from the perspective of maximizing learning. So I completely agree with that. So this, even in the Los Altos classroom, you have, it's a 5th grade classroom. They're all 10 or 11 years old, and there you have that mix. Our ideal would actually be a classroom of all age groups. Literally in the same room, you have 5th graders, or you have 5-year-olds, and you have 18-year-olds, and there's no kind of preconceived notion that if you're 13 and you're learning this, you're stupid, or it's just the pace that everyone learns at. And what you get there is, I actually think everyone in the mix will actually act a lot more mature when they're around older and younger students, and then you get the true benefit of kind of the learning across generations. So I completely I completely agree with that it's it's a good comment, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. That's you. Oh, very good. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Great. After all these very wonderful questions, I have a really pragmatic one.
Yeah.
Which is your lectures, for example, on the French Revolution and the California high school exit exam, use imagery and problems from other sources. How do you dance around copyright?
How do I dance around copyright? So I have a very loose interpretation of fair use. So no, well, that's actually true. But the, so all of this, like the French Revolution stuff, that I do look on Wikipedia. I look for stuff that's in the public domain. Most of those paintings and stuff are in the public domain. The copyright's expired. Stuff like the California or the Massachusetts test for teacher licensing. I mean, these tests are written by government bodies, and I assume they want teachers to pass. And so I've kind of taken on things like that, if it's a government sponsored, I also have stuff for like I don't know if you know, the IIT joint entrance exam. I have some of their problems. These are issued by the Indian government. I didn't ask their permission. But I assume, I mean, they can sue me. It would be an interesting PR issue for them. But you know, one, I actually do think it falls under fair use. But even, I would be very surprised if they were upset. I wouldn't take something from McGraw-Hill and do it. It's a simple answer. Or I'd ask their permission first.
Thanks.
And I am careful about the Wikipedia Creative Commons and all that kind of stuff too. Yeah, simple answer. So next one. What tools and techniques are you using to interest students who are traditionally not self-motivated or those requiring a different learning style than a standard video provides? So traditionally not self-motivated, actually the gaming is a huge thing for the traditionally not self-motivated. And actually I think once, a lot of people are just not motivated because they have these gaps in their knowledge that the traditional model can't address, and people are just talking past each other. And if you allow them to remediate without feeling embarrassed, and they can do it in a game framework, and they get points and badges, that actually, I think, solves a lot of the actual motivation problem. The other, you know, the learning styles, you know, what are you doing requiring a different learning style than standard video provides? So there's a couple of things. I mean, you know, there's the video, but I think the exercises are at least as important, and as we do more for the peers to be able to interact with each other, that's at least as important. But the other thing is, you know, I mean, this isn't Khan Academy related, but they've actually done a lot of studies, like double-blind control studies, and the learning styles is kind of a myth, that there's actually good instruction and bad instruction. And it's actually, everyone likes to think that they're, oh, I'm a auditory learner, or I'm a visual learner. But the reality is, no, some things you'll learn, you know, if you're learning art history or geometry, you're visual. If you're learning foreign language, you're auditory, or maybe a little bit of visual. If you're learning certain things, you like to see it written. And when they actually did this isn't me, you could go Google it. There's a bunch of stuff. I was just reading this last week, that there's actually no evidence that to teach people who are self-identified or somehow identified auditory learners in an auditory way actually is better than not. But with that said is, I think there are multiple ways to teach the same thing. And so I'll make videos. I think in the future we'll probably have other, hopefully good lecturers who will take a slightly different take on things. Even some topics, I take 5 different takes on it, so people see it from a bunch of different angles, maybe at different skill levels. Even now, there's some videos that are very primary, a little bit more mechanical, but some go a lot deeper and go into the proofs and go into the actual intuition. So I think it's just making sure that there's enough material out there that it responds to every type of learner. Oh.
The implementation that you've done is great, but the ideas aren't really new.
No.
They're 30, 40, 50, 200 years old.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how much you've been able to tap into the small bit of this kind of learning that's been done in the past, talking about like Sudbury schools,
yeah,
or some of the very radical educational groups, unschoolers. How much has been able to flow back into the things you're doing in Khan Academy? And
so, you know, so the general comment is that this is nothing. The general concepts here are not at all new. And actually, I was recently looking. I mean, people, you know, this whole notion of actually mastering something before you move to another concept is called mastery-based learning, and people have been talking about it for 80 years. And actually, they've done studies on it, like 30 years ago. And it's funny, the two definitive, in all of education research, the two definitive studies, or at least the only two that I've found that are just super definitive, are one, mastery-based learning. Every trial they did, and you know, they did this 30 years ago with like worksheets and people walking around, but it was essentially the same model, had unambiguous success. I mean, these kids were learning at several-fold the pace of traditional students with much better retention and much better mastery of things. And then the other thing, there's actually a good bit of research, 30 years old, definitive, never refuted, is that when people watch a lecture, they zone out after 15 minutes. And they zone out for about 5 minutes, and then when they zone back in, they're only able to zone in for about 9 minutes. And then they zone out for another 5 minutes, and then when they zone back in, they can only zone in for about 6 minutes. And this process goes until by the end of a 90-minute lecture, they can only zone in for like 3 or 4 minutes. And I think we've all experienced that. Hopefully none of y'all are right now. So these are not, to the questions point, these are not new ideas. Even when radio came out, people said this is going to revolutionize education, get the best lecturers, put them on radio. TV came out, same idea. VCRs came out, same idea. I think what makes it different this time is it is so easy to get at. I mean, it is literally on demand. And you have all of the data, all of the analytics. And I think there is something about the actual craftsmanship, that this wasn't built by a bureaucracy at the Department of Education or a bureaucracy at a publishing company. This is built by people who are literally looking at the learner and saying, well, what does the learner want and what's useful for them? In terms of actually leveraging some of that stuff, I think we can leverage the spirit. I think we can leverage a lot of the models. And it kind of gives us confidence that, look, there's actually a huge amount of research. It just doesn't exist because it wasn't practical until now. I think that's probably the level that we can leverage a lot of these other models. I'll take it over here. Your program demonstrates the role that technology can play for making learning efficient and effective, yet the adoption rate for technology in the public education system is lagging. What hurdles must we overcome to get these tools in the classroom? So, I think the technology in the public education system is lagging for good reason. I don't know, even when I was in school, in like the 80s, we had computers in the classroom, and we would like go into the computer lab, and it was just like we would like learn how to like insert a diskette, or like, really silly stuff, like how to like boot the computer. I mean, it's very, there was no like actually using the technology in the classroom. And I think that goes all the way now where people have iPads, but they're still not really doing something constructive. So I think a lot of the skepticism was actually warranted. And I hopefully Khan Academy will be a catalyst for saying, okay, finally we have something that is actually something to do with the technology in the classroom. And so I'm hoping that it's actually going to be a catalyst for solving that problem.
I mean, this is a very disruptive approach, things like flipping the classroom and so on. Are there any stakeholders where you've encountered strong resistance? I don't know, parents, principals, teachers, or somebody?
Yeah, so have we encountered any resistance? It's strange, but no. Well, one, because from the get-go, the way, as you know, it's been a very organic process. So never, 5 years ago or even now, we're not saying we are going to lobby the Department of Education or this state body or this school district, and we're going to try to sell our product to them. If we did that, we would face a lot of resistance. What we're doing is we're literally putting stuff out there. We have mainly the student in mind, and forward-thinking schools and institutions and school districts are coming to us, and so they've been pretty amazing about doing it. I think one interesting thing that'll happen, I think for almost everyone in this room, if you were to be a school teacher, this would be a more fun way to teach. You get to go into a room, you don't have to prepare, and you get to kind of be a mentor for these students. I think what could be a little scary for some teachers is that you're a 5th grade teacher, but there's some kids doing calculus in that room, and what we've seen at the Los Altos, it's actually pretty profound what they've been doing. They walk up to those kids, because some of those kids, they go red on like the chain rule, right? and so the teacher's like, I have to intervene. So she'll walk up to that student and she's like, you know what? I haven't seen this since college and I forgot how to do it. Let's learn about this together. And it takes a lot of self-confidence for a teacher to admit that they aren't the know-it-all at the front of the classroom, but they are just maybe a more mature, someone who's seen more of the world, but they're at the same level mathematically right now, but they can learn it together. So I think that's kind of the paradigm shift that will have to go on. But I think it becomes much more pleasant as a teacher to be able to do that. And the kid immediately responds to the teacher. The kid immediately respects the teacher more when he or she actually communicates in that kind of way.
And parents seem to be okay with it also. And
yeah, with the Los Altos, we had no experience actually working in a school system. The Los Altos, the principals and school board, they set up some parent meetings. They were all, the parents, so that they felt comfortable with it, they gave everyone the option to opt out. No one opted out. And now they're actually getting a lot of push to go, you can imagine, we're going to continue to multiple classes, but you can imagine there are 5th graders where some of the kids aren't doing the chain rule, and their parents are getting a little paranoid. That little gap is occurring. But I'll ask, the modern economy demands an increasingly educated workforce, yet higher education continues to become more and more unaffordable. How is this situation rectified? Can college be disrupted? So the simple answer is yes. And actually, I think this is something, I mean, I don't know if I should go on the record on video, but I said this at lunch, so no harm saying it now. I actually think Google could play a big role in that. I mean, imagine, and the details have yet to be worked out, but imagine where all of the core like academic stuff Khan Academy takes care of. If you want to learn electric circuits, if you want to learn big O notation, you want to learn capital asset pricing model, Khan Academy can do those kind of academic things. So imagine if there was a university in Mountain View, we put it in downtown Castro Street, has a nice vibe and all of that. And you literally, I mean, we could even leverage Khan Academy. We know all of the best students are going to be using Khan Academy already. I think a lot of them are. And so we don't have a kind of if you started an institution, you don't have kind of this kind of recognition problem. But what you do is the students, you say, look, instead of going to MIT or Stanford or Harvard, why don't you come to this university, whatever you call it, Silicon Valley, whatever, some name, and the focus is you spend 1 year at Google or 6 months at Google, 6 months at Apple, 6 months working on a project for Kleiner Perkins, 6 months writing an iPhone app, 6 months working at Facebook, and you do a series of projects. Those projects are essentially your transcript. We have seminars. We'll even set up a little bit of a dorm for you, so you have the nice college experience, and you can walk into each other's classroom, in each other's bedrooms in the middle of the night, and chat about things and all the rest. And instead of you paying any tuition, we're going to pay you. Each of those companies, instead of, I mean, all of a sudden, when I graduated from college, all of a sudden, all of these, Google didn't exist then, but Google-like companies like, oh, I want to, there's a smart guy hired from a good school, I want to hire him, and literally 4 years ago, I had probably 90% of the same skills, and I couldn't get a job at the local supermarket. I'm serious. Like, I literally applied at the supermarket, and I couldn't get a job. And it was just the process of going to one of these schools was just like a big signal. So on one side, you would get these really smart 17 or 18-year-olds immediately be doing useful things, and we know from recent companies that started that there's some very innovative things that 18 or 19-year-olds can do, and the companies benefit, but even more important, these people are actually getting tangible skills, but they're still getting the academic component because a lot of that can be done self-paced, it can be done in kind of a seminar format, and frankly, the faculty then, it becomes all of you guys. And the management at Google and Apple and the VCs in the areas and the entrepreneurs in the areas. And I think if you have an institution like that and all of a sudden people not only do they not have to pay for school, they can actually be paid to go to school and they finish and they're probably going to get a better salary and better job placement than pretty much any other university in the world. I think just that example would pretty much disrupt education, disrupt higher education. So we'll have to work out the details. We'll have to. Yeah.
Hi, so the math stuff actually looks really great, and I'm just really excited to see this kind of thing. My question was how it extends to sciences, where sometimes there really isn't a correct answer, or at least if you just write a bunch of word problems, physics word problems aren't really physics. There's something more deep going on there, and I was wondering how you would, if you had any thoughts on how that extends.
Yeah, so how do we extend the stuff that, maybe it's not as concrete, multiple choice or free answer, right answer all the time. Well, one, I think there is a lot that is that, and that kind of builds the scaffold. So you would do the traditional kinematics and Newtonian mechanics and kind of the traditional problem sets you can do in this type of a form factor. And then it can be all self-paced. I think to get to the next level of kind of real deep understanding, there's a couple of things that we could do. We could do more like simulation-based learning, where as you go through that knowledge map, at some points these simulations unlock, or maybe they always unlock, and you have to kind of figure out some things just by observing the simulations. I think a really interesting thing, one thing that, we talk about providing education, but one thing that we don't do is we don't credential people right now. We don't, in kind of a authenticatable type of way. So we're even, maybe oral exams is the right answer. Like, if you have badges, and right now you're a novice physicist or whatever, first level physics person on the Khan Academy. If you want to get to the the middle level or the ninja level or whatever we end up calling it, you have to get 5 other ninja level people to have a Skype oral exam with you, and only then if 4 of the 5 or 5 out of the 5 say he's ready to be a physics ninja, that's too cheesy of a name, but then he will move up. So there's actually a possibility here to actually do the best of, the gold standard in evaluation is the oral exam, but it has to be well done. But I think there is something here where we could go to that level.
Thank you.
I'll take, currently most of the content is focused on learner-centric approach. Are there plans to incorporate content for instructors, facilitators, more softer skills, example, presentation skills, facilitation skills, adult learning theories, etc.? We will. I mean, you know, we will do. I don't know if it'll just be for instructors, facilitators, but I mean, I don't know. This might ruin the Khan Academy, but I've been tempted to give like dating advice on the. You know, my son's 2 years old right now, and the theory is when he's 17, he's more likely to listen to 34-year-old Sal than 50-year-old Sal. And so if I just record him now, it'll be like a nice time shift of I'm kind of serious about it. But we're open to it. We don't want to do something that's really cheesy, like, you know, make sure to eat, 5 different groups of fruits and vegetables. And I mean, some people have lobbied for videos like that. We want people where any Khan Academy video you watch, there's kind of like an aha moment, like, yes, I understand something about the world that like all of that I'm not getting from other sources. So we would want to do it so that it's actually meaningful. But we're not opposed to doing softer skills type of things. We'll see how it works. We don't know.
So it's clear to me how this stuff can work really well at the elementary level, but I'm worried about what it might do to the curriculum at the higher levels. I have, helped my kids learn this stuff all the way up, and by the time you get to Euclidean geometry, a good problem might take half an hour to an hour to solve. The answer might be half a page proof, and there might be 10 different proofs that are equally valid. I'm actually thinking of some specific problems that I worked through with my son. So how do you cope with the fact that you're limited to this form factor that you described to us?
I mean, I think some of that can be tackled with this form factor, not all of it. I mean, if we design the modules right, you could actually probably do fairly deep. I mean, it would be hard to be able to have someone actually write the proof and then do a proof check. I mean, even people have attempted.
Philosophy 51 at Stanford was completely taught by computer in my freshman year in 1979.
Okay, so it's done. Computers can do it. No.
Not as a practical matter.
No, I mean, seriously, I think we're going to try to tackle as much as you can do with that form factor. But what we're hoping is if you get a lot of the blocking and tackling done out of this way, it frees up a lot of time so that when there actually is human interaction, and the human interaction might be with a parent, it might be with a teacher. We have these meetups happening, and these meetups might turn into kind of spontaneous tutoring sessions where people can work through more difficult problems or group problems. I think some of that stuff could. I mean, we're even entertaining. I mean, now we have enough students. We're even entertaining Khan Academy math competitions. Mm-hmm. So it's the next level where it's like human-written, unique problems, and then maybe teams in different areas can try to solve. Maybe they can collaborate. We haven't thought about it deeply yet, but I think it's doable. It won't just be 100% automated, though.
Right, and then a much shorter question that perhaps has the same answer.
Yeah.
I coached Math Olympiad for a number of years, and one of the things I really enjoyed was when the students came up with a solution that was not the one that I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
You've kind of cut the feedback loop here.
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
Yeah, no, I think on Math Olympiad type questions, I mean, I think that's going to be a completely different, it won't be this. It will be, so we are playing with the notion of having like a question repository, human written questions, although right now we're thinking there would still be more kind of, the right answer type of things, not proof-based. But you could imagine, actually, that would kind of get closer to the peer-to-peer writing type of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a question, people submit solutions, and then, if you have a critical mass of people on the system, they can evaluate it, kind of a peer review, and they can say whose proof was the coolest or something like that. I don't know. But I think it can, so it won't be automated in the instruction, but because of the web and the number of people you have, kind of a critical mass, you could probably get a good peer-to-peer thing going, I think.
All right, so one last try at the first question.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really answer the part that scares me most.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm worried that this will be so successful, it's going to dumb down the curricula. It's going to be easy enough. It's going to be so much easier for the school to do stuff in this way that things that aren't amenable to automation will simply vanish from the curriculum. Is that a legitimate worry?
I don't think so. I hope the first part about your worry is true, that it's wildly successful. But I think the answer is that right now what you have in schools, you have great teachers and you have not so great teachers and you have things in between. What happens is the kids who have the not so great teachers, they're still going to be able to do well on the SAT. They're still going to be able to do well on the AP calculus. Maybe they're not going to be Math Olympiads, but they're going to get their blocking and tackling so that they still have the same opportunities and all of that. And the students who have the good teachers, the great teachers, those teachers are going to see this as, yeah, this is taking all the blocking. Like if you're tutoring kids, you can say, look, you need to learn how to like add fractions. I know you can do that on your own, especially if you're going to get to the math. You can do that part on your own. Khan Academy has your back. But then when the time with me, we're going to go to the next level. And I think so. I think across the board, hopefully it'll have an upward effect on the level of discourse. I mean, it's kind of like a lot of people are going to have their gaps out of the way. So just everything's hopefully will be more intelligent in the classroom. Hopefully, I'll take. And anyone should feel free to leave. I'll hang out here and answer a few more questions over the next. I think we're out of time, but I'll do another 10 minutes of this, and then we can just whatever. Do you have any ideas about how to engage parents in their child's development? So the easiest way to do that, any parents, is actually you should log on Khan Academy right now, and you should start doing the math problems. Although I suspect many of you all already know a lot of this material, but we've seen over and over again that fundamentally changes the conversation that happens in the class at the dinner table when parents are also doing the same mathematics as their kids. I'll take a.
Is there a chance that kids are just kind of like figuring out the trick and sort of like getting through the thing, but there's no real retention? Like, do you do anything?
No, not only is there a chance, they are doing that. The kids are like the fifth graders especially. It's amazing how good they are at gaming things. At figuring out, oh no, that can't be the choice, that can be the choice. And so it's kind of a mixed blessing. One is we are watching them and we're saying, oh, we know they're just gaming that module. So we either have to make that module less gameable, make it free answer, or make it, do something to it so that can't be gamed, or we have to add other modules to make sure that they're really learning the concept. In terms of retention, we actually do have a thing that after X days, if you haven't done a module or another module that covers that module, that implicitly covers that same concept, it asks you to review it. So you'll get extra points to go back and review. So we're trying to, the model is the ideal school would be you're walking down the hallway in 7th grade and then all of a sudden your 5th grade math teacher comes up to you and asks you a 5th grade math question. And so that's what we're trying to do. So it is gaming, but it is actually interesting because we actually saw that with the chain rule module. A couple of 5th graders just figured out mechanically how to, even that's not easy though, but they figured out just the pattern. But it was still kind of cool. Well, one, I'd also argue a lot of 12th graders are also doing that. But it was cool once they figured out the pattern, they started to teach each other. So we actually even have this one view, you can see the cascade once, who's the first student in the class, and you can see the cascade of the other students right after that, after one person gets it. But with that said is, what we did identify that as we have to add more modules to make sure that people really are understanding the concept as opposed to just learning the mechanics. Oh yeah?
And after that, we have to basically wrap up for the video also. But as he said, he'll be hanging around, and you guys can come over and basically chat with him.
I'll take.
Just one more question.
I'll take it from you.
So as you kind of said, the Khan Academy is definitely kind of turning things around. And how, I guess, in the classroom with this kind of self-instructed learning, how do you try to reapply the framework of kind of a grading system or a testing system to kind of, try to give this same kind of progress feedback that people are expecting from education?
Yeah, so the question, how do you do the same type of assessment, or how, how can we start labeling kids if we, I think it's a good problem to have. Maybe we shouldn't. And I think the ideal, the ideal is you take, I actually do think it is good that we do have these standardized tests, the SAT and the AP tests. But the ideal is you don't take them when you're 17, like everyone lockstep takes them when you're 17. You take them when you're ready for it. So there's some 5th graders, and they're doing the Khan Academy. When we have the 300 modules, and we're like, look, statistically, it looks like if you go and take the AP calculus test right now, we can even give them a distribution. We think that there's a 80% chance you're going to get a 5 or a 4 or a 5 or something. Go take it. And if there's a 17-year-old who we think there's an 80% chance you're not going to get higher than a 3, don't take it yet. Just keep working. Wait until you're 20. Wait until you're 25, whatever. And then you can, if your goal is to learn calculus. So one thing I'm hoping we can do in a non-touchy-feely way, because a lot of people, grades, when people say no grades, it sounds very touchy-feely and very, no, it's the opposite. We actually want people to master. Everyone should be an A+ student. Everyone should have 100% mastery if they really want to get to kind of some future level. I can't tell you how many, even when I've interviewed, even in my past life, people who've gone through algebra, geometry, trigonometry, calculus, blah, 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 and they still don't know when to apply algebra. right? They still don't know when to, what was the whole point of this non-mastery-based learning? It was just kind of a big jumping through hoops and showing that you know how to do homework type of exercise. So yeah, I think it'll be a good problem that if there's no grades, and if there's literally just, we say you know this. And you don't know this at A or B level. If we say you know it at an A level. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.